Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
Good evening, everyone. It's August 8th at 6:30, and this is the regular monthly meeting of Fitchburg's Transportation and Transit Commission. Calling the meeting to order, and this month we have a new member, and we are very grateful for Rick Smith to step up to serve, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Would you like to take a minute to tell us anything about yourself that help us get to know you a little bit better, those of you who don't know?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Go for it.
We moved to Fitchburg in 1994, so 30 years this year, always in the same house, Wilshire Drive, so near McKee Farms Park, just down from the splash pad. I worked at Promega for that entire time, so I had the lengthy commute of Wilshire over to Promega here at night. So there was never any day where weather prevented me from going to work if needed.
You could ski over it.
I could one way or another. My wife homeschooled our two daughters, so although we were in the Madison School District, we didn't take advantage of Madison schools. We were homeschooling all the way through high school, so the older daughter is a professor at the university in the same department that Steve left, right? We were engineering.
Okay.
And the younger one is a jazz musician in New York, so different sides of the brain. What else? We were talking about hiking. I enjoy hiking the Ice Age Trail, some biking and that sort of thing. And I have some experience with transportation around the city, so hopefully I can bring some useful ideas.
Good. Well, welcome.
Thanks.
I did not realize that you and I moved to the city in the same year.
Did we?
Yes, 94.
Were you in that house though?
What? Yes.
Oh.
We built that house in 94.
Oh,
and previously we had lived in Madison for 9 years.
Okay.
All right. Next up, public appearances.
To do
what
call?
Oh, sorry. So for the record, everyone is here except Micah, who is excused, and Bill is on video, and everybody else is here in person. Thank you. Moving on to public appearances for non-agenda items, we have two members of the public here. I will recognize Marcia first. What do you have to tell us, Marcia? Unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Marcia Griskovich. I've resided at 5867 Woods Edge Road since 1992, longer than you.
Yeah, I guess.
Tonight I am speaking on behalf of the Fitchburg Senior Center Friends Board of Directors, which is a 15-member volunteer nonprofit organization that supports the mission and programming of the Fitchburg Senior Center. I am currently the treasurer of the Friends, having served as both president and vice president in the past. Over my years on the Friends board, I've spoken a couple of times to the City Council as an advocate for the Fitchburg Senior Center and senior citizens of Fitchburg. Recently, our board determined that time we made a plea to this commission. We are disappointed that the Metro buses will only extend to a small portion of Fitchburg, with stops quite a distance apart, and that getting from one part of Fitchburg to another will probably take a significant amount of time. So making an appointment will be impossible for seniors. Many currently use the volunteer driver program. Taxi and Uber services can be quite expensive. The Friends have paid for a handful of taxi and Uber riders when there was no alternative way for the person to get home or to and from appointments, such as early morning hospital check-ins. Senior center staff who know their clients' needs must set these up in advance. Dane County provides some funding for transportation for area seniors to ride to the center for lunch or to ride to a grocery store in Fitchburg. However, Dane County has age limits on who can ride. You must be at least 60 years old. Currently, seniors can be bused to lunch at the center, but the restrictions on this program require that they get back on the bus at 12:30 p.m. for the return to their homes. There are many programs held in the mornings and afternoons at the senior center to which these folks are not able to attend. When a person must give up driving and cannot walk, bike, or e-bike to the dentist, doctor, surgeon, banker, financial planner, or lawyer, his or her life changes dramatically. Consider how you would function if you were unable to drive. As a department of the city of Fitchburg, the Fitchburg Senior Center is an important, essential, and spectacular asset to the city. Numerous senior housing facilities have been approved by city mayors and alders over the past years. The seniors are here, where they can enjoy everything about Fitchburg that makes it special, except adequate transportation. There were no requirements in the approvals for development that required a facility to own a shuttle for them to get to the city campus or anywhere else. Amongst the files that were maintained by the previous treasurer, there's a folder that indicates that transportation has been an issue for at least 2 decades. The topic of transportation for the senior citizens in Fitchburg is not a new topic, but I'd like to go on record in support of better, more flexible busing for our seniors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for testifying. It would be inappropriate for us to discuss any of this, but it would be okay if you have any questions for Marcia about her testimony.
I was just trying to understand if the concern you have is related to the Madison Metro bus route or some other transportation.
Primarily some other transportation. The Madison Metro is what it is because they've made their decisions. Probably not going to be liked by a lot of people, but it is what it is. And we have to pay for what service they even allow us. So.
Thank you very much, Marcia. This has been a long topic of concern for this commission. I know I served on from 2005 to 2015, and we talked about it every year. And it's not gotten better. And when asked by a member by the chair of Madison Area Bus Advocates what I thought of the choice that Madison Metro was giving residents on coverage or ridership, I said it was a false choice, and I still believe that. We need to be, well, I'm on a soapbox, so I'll get off. So thank you very much, appreciate it.
May I suggest that this could be a good agenda item for the future, and we could invite
Sure.
the senior center director?
It is a perennial agenda item.
Yeah.
It's very much revolved, Bill Horns would bring it up every other month. We are very interested in the forthcoming someday study of options to solve this. But they're not going to bring up a magic carpet. It's going to be the same choices, and it's going to take money, and it's an investment we should make, I believe. But yes, so it is on the list. Okay. Next up, Logan Reichstad. How'd I do?
Yeah.
You are here to register only. Is there any particular topic you're interested in our agenda today?
Not today, nothing to speak to or share with you all.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your interest in our commission. Thank you. Next up, approval of the agenda. I would take a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, then we're on to the minutes. Very Spartan minutes as usual.
I move approval.
Any, a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. Any discussion or amendments to it? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, say aye.
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 Thank you. Next up, staff report. Ross.
All right. Open that up. So this month I've kind of got two separate items that kind of have staff report type things in it. The next one is the 2025 project, so I'll try to keep that stuff out of this staff report. But for just everybody, including our new members, the Public Works Department does some annual projects, and then we also do bigger reconstruction projects where we add in new facilities and stuff like that. Our annual projects are more maintenance type projects. So we do street resurfacing. That project is functionally complete for the year. We've got a couple of park paths and then some restoration on the streets that we resurfaced left. For our surface maintenance project, which is basically where we don't actually repave the street, we're about 50% complete on that project.
That's paint and chip seal.
Yes, and crack seal. And this year we actually added in a patching component where if a road is only, say, 10% of it is in really poor condition, then we'll just cut that out, patch it, and chip seal over the whole thing instead of just defaulting to resurfacing.
Can you provide an example of that?
Osmondson, south of where we resurfaced last year, was we basically redid some intersections. We repaved some intersections and then chip sealed the whole thing.
And so still north of Lacey, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Kind of. There's like a middle section.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Russ and Tim did a great presentation for the committee of the whole late last year. I think it was like a November.
Yeah. I don't remember what month.
Where he walked through the street rating system and all the different street maintenance projects. It's really interesting. I can send it out to everybody. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
we've been kind of talking about doing that. Maybe not annually, but
like every other year.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was a really helpful presentation.
When I was mayor and we were worried about the sustainability of our street maintenance program, I learned all about PACER ratings, and I go along the streets and count the cracks. All right, continue. Yes.
Yeah. Sidewalk repairs. So this is obviously not necessarily car related, but walking related. We do a sidewalk repair project every year. That's going to advertise next Wednesday. And then that work will be done this fall. Basically, they just pop out broken sections of sidewalk and replace them, or if there's a vertical gap, they'll shave it down.
Is that still where we have the city's sidewalk system basically divided into 3 parts and we examine one part of it each year, or is that been abandoned?
So we have 6 zones now, I believe,
Okay.
and we do 1 zone every year, plus whatever streets we're also resurfacing.
Okay.
So, for bus rapid transit, staff provided comments on the 10% plans for that. So the design consultant for Metro Transit is working on the 30% plans. Most of their work so far has been on the Madison sections, which will require a lot more design work than our section of Fish Hatch.
Rebuilding Park Street.
Yeah. I don't envy them for having to do that.
Sorry, what is a 10% plan versus a 30% plan?
So our goal is to get to 100% complete plans. And generally we do 10%, which is very, very minimal, just sketches.
Conceptual. Okay.
Yeah. And then we usually have a lot of comments on the 10% plans, like don't do that thing at all, do this completely different thing instead.
Sure.
And then as you go to 30%, 60%, 90%, the comments generally get more specific and in-depth, and you add more and more detail to the plans each time.
And the more you invest at each level, the harder they are to change, or the more expensive.
Yes.
And so that's why the check back with the client, our city, at these multiple points. Don't want to get it all done and say, oh, we don't really want to do it that way.
Yeah. And just for context, we have bi-weekly meetings with the design consultant for that. There's 2 different consultants, one for traffic, one for the actual road design. So I meet with them every other week.
Is that a consultant that's shared with Madison or a consultant specific?
So it is solely Madison's consultant.
Okay.
And they are basically bringing Fitchburg in because a decent chunk of the bus rapid transit is on Fish Hatchery Road in Fitchburg. But it will be, Madison will oversee the project in general and will inspect our portions that are in the city of Fitchburg.
And conveniently, Madison is our contractor for all our traffic signals. And traffic signals are a big deal with BRT.
And then on the Fitcherona Road reconstruction project, we got 100% plans and specs from our contractor. So we're reviewing those, and the next phase of that will be property acquisition. Then Sayin Road is kind of in the same place, except for we are advertising that project right now. Bids will open for phase 2 on August 22nd and for phase 3 on August 13th. There's 2 separate phases because there's 2 separate funding sources for that with different requirements. So we applied for a grant for the Southdale Bike Connection, which is from the Cap City Trail at McCoy Road up to the Southdale neighborhood. So it runs parallel to Rimrock. Part of that will be a boardwalk, part of it will be on the, adjacent to the road.
East side was the
Yes,
plan?
yep, correct.
And so will there be a crossing at Anderburg, Ski Lane? Or just dump into Rimrock?
It will either veer off of Rimrock onto Anderburg, kind of where that boat launch is, and go up Anderburg and get onto Rimrock that way, or go into the bike lanes on Rimrock.
Okay, so.
And the county is also resurfacing Rimrock, and we've been trying to make those plans sync up with what they do there.
Perfect.
How competitive is it? Like, how likely are we to get it, and when do we find out?
I think we're pretty likely to get it. When I was applying for it, I was told by one of the program coordinators that they hadn't had as many applications as they had hoped. So that, I think, bodes well for us.
What program is this?
This is the carbon reduction.
Oh, carbon, yeah, that's right.
Grant.
And that's the one I wrote the letter of support
Yes, yeah. Steve wrote a letter of support, and so did Rutabaga Paddle Sports.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mine was on behalf of Bike Fitchburg.
yes, yep. So that was very helpful. So thanks for that. Wayland Road, the paved shoulders for that are under design. We had to do some extra survey, and our consultant is working on that right now. That's Corey, who is the former Public Works Director, who did the first round of those bike lanes, so he knows that
Very handy.
project well.
AE Com still?
He's with Rupert Milky.
Oh,
He went from
okay. You took our business with
his
it.
last company. I forget his last company.
Last company was AE Com, I thought.
No, it was someone different. But
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That's basically what I've got for current projects. So that's my report. Any
Questions for the transportation engineer?
Wheeling, which part?
So it's from Fish Hatchery Road to Fitchrona Road. So the section that has kind of spotty bike shoulders in some sections.
Yeah.
And they're gonna continue the entire way.
And there's still a little bit of Fitchburg to the west of Fitchrona Road before it turns into Verona, right?
No.
No, that's town of Verona, and so at Fitchrona Road, the speed limit goes down to 45,
Yes.
and there are no shoulders at all.
Yes.
And that will stay that way. They just finished updating that road.
Yeah.
And we talked to them about it, and they have no money, so, but at least they have a lower speed limit.
Right.
And the city of Verona is encroaching, so parts that used to be 45 are now 35 and 25. Okay, moving on then. On to the council. Let's start on this resolution of support for a Safe Streets for All grant with a motion to recommend approval.
I'll move approval on resolution R-14124.
Second.
Very good. And staff report.
Okay, so we kind of have talked about this a couple of times now, but this is the actual resolution of support for this. So basically the Greater Madison Metropolitan Planning Organization is submitting a joint grant application between a few different municipalities for the US DOT's Safe Streets for All, SS4A is the abbreviation for that, for the planning and demonstration grant program. There is also an implementation grant that's part of SS4A, but we're applying for the planning and demonstration grant. The municipalities in the joint grant are Cottage Grove, Shorewood Hills, City of Verona, Fitchburg, and City of Madison, and then also Dane County. So the SS4A program is an 80-20 grant program, so 80% of the funding would be federal and 20% would be the local match that Fitchburg is responsible for, and all the other communities are responsible for their portion of that 20%. So the reason we're applying for this grant is as part of our ongoing safety efforts. A comprehensive safety action plan would allow staff and elected officials to make informed decisions regarding funding allocations for roadway safety projects through the entire city. Safety action plan would include the following elements at a minimum, and these are just taken straight from the Vision Zero website. Leadership commitment and goal setting, planning structure, safety analysis, engagement and collaboration, equity, policy and project process changes, strategy and project selections, and progress and transparency. So this safety action plan would be specific to Fitchburg and would build on existing safety action plans created by the MPO and would allow the city of Fitchburg to work towards implementing a Vision Zero policy and to applying for the implementation grants that are part of Safe Streets for All. So.
Would also guide work that we could do under other funding sources, like
Yes.
carbon reduction or reconnecting communities or transportation alternatives, all federal grants, plus our own funds. So the plan would not be specific to this grant program, although it's tailored to allow us to apply for these grants. The one nice thing about the implementation or the planning grants is that it allows for quick build, or sometimes known as tactical urbanism. So you want to put a traffic circle temporarily in an intersection with bollards or something. You can buy bollards with the planning grants to experiment with some of these newer safety mitigations. Did folks have the opportunity to read the resolution, and are there any questions on it?
Do we have a sense of, I know we don't have to determine it right now because this is just a supporting resolution, but do we have a sense of where we might generate the 60,000 local match? Is it a tint closure funding or?
So that is a good question that Misty could answer a lot better than I could.
But we have
Misty's
some.
our finance director.
We'll talk about it in finance as well.
There is, from what I understand, there's a grant.
There's a pot of money.
Grant fund.
Oh, the grant fund from, that's our
Yes.
tint closure money, okay.
Yep, and that's specifically designed for matching funds for outside grants.
And that would involve a budget amendment to move money from that fund to whatever the appropriate fund.
That's a perfect
Yes.
use for one-time money,
Yeah.
so that's great.
Well, anything else?
The $60,000 implies that there's an amount that is being requested in the grant. Is the grant an automatic certain number, and that's why it's $60,000 match? Or do we think that the 20% of, well, so it'd be $300,000, right, would be the correct amount? Like, is it our judgment that we want 300,000, or is that
Yes.
like the number that has to be asked for?
Are these the $3 million grants?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
So the $300,000 is what we expect a comprehensive safety action plan to cost. So then multiply that by, 20% and you get our $60,000
Okay.
match.
And so when the city applies for the grant, the application requests $300,000
Yes, yeah.
or $240,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, the MPO applied for the grant, but yes.
And
Oh.
each community has its own piece of
Yep.
that
Yep.
amount of money.
They consulted with each of the municipal staffs to allocate the costs and the work across the different jurisdictions.
Yep.
So the grant will be rewarded all or nothing to the entirety of these municipalities.
To the county,
Yeah, the portion that would
Yeah.
come to Fitchburg would be $240,000, of which then we would match 60.
Yes.
Like the rest of the cities have other amounts of money, and it's already determined that that amount is Fitchburg's, should we get the grant.
Correct. And we won't necessarily spend all of that $300,000 so we will have to go out to request for proposals for this plan. And if it comes back that someone will do it for $200,000, then we'll just spend the $200,000 to get it done. So.
So is Fitchburg getting its own, well, will we have a separate plan or will it be like a Fitchburg part of a bigger plan with the rest of the grant applicants?
So Fitchburg will have its own separate plan. We will put out our own separate RFP, as will all the other communities. And not everyone is applying for a safety action plan. Some of them are applying for, I believe Cottage Grove is applying for an active transportation plan. Dane County is doing a comprehensive safety action plan, and one or two of the other communities are as well. But some of them are applying for different things, so. But everyone will basically have their own control of that money once it is funded.
But there's great economies of scale in the application. And we think that the application will be more attractive to the funders because it's being collaborative. That's always a big deal.
And on like the fifth whereas, it said, oh, sorry. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Fifth whereas says 40% of the funding goes to planning and demonstration, 60% goes to implementation, and then you said City of Fitchburg only planning and demonstration. That's the part that's how we want to spend the money. That means that, to me, that means the 60-40 split is across all of the municipalities, and people have figured out that.
No, that's across the whole country. That's, the 60-40 split is the $1 billion.
Oh, I see. It says it directs funds to be divided to meet the requirement that, but it's not a requirement on a grant by grant basis.
Correct.
It's just a requirement across the entire.
It means that there's two big pools of money. One for people who have already had SS4A planning grants. They become eligible for implementation grants, am I right?
Yes.
And that includes Madison, I believe.
Yes, Madison already has done a planning grant.
Okay, without
Or a
Fitchburg.
planning study, correct.
Yep. They don't need any economies of scale from the likes of us.
Sorry, Bill.
Yeah, Ross, the list of municipalities on there, I presume all of the Dane County municipalities were asked about this and these were the only takers? Why, why didn't Middleton show up as part of this or anything like that?
So all of the municipalities in the MPO were asked. There are municipalities in Dane County that are not in the Metropolitan Planning Organization, like Stoughton. I don't know why other communities did not join. It seems like a very good opportunity. I know Sun Prairie, they lost their transportation planner right around when this was starting, so I think they just didn't have the staff time to commit to doing the application, but that's the only one I can kind of speculate on.
It could be that they didn't have a matching fund budget.
The match is significant
Yeah.
That's it?
for local municipalities.
You all set?
Yes.
Ross, what did Public Works do?
Public Works approved unanimously.
Very good. Any other discussion
And
questions?
during that meeting, Tim told us the CIP project number is 1045 for the grant matching program.
That's something I didn't know.
Good to know.
Just a timing question, and then we approve presuming that we vote unanimous or not unanimous, either way, then it goes to the city council, and the city council then decides to accept it or not.
Mhm.
And then the grant itself from the NPO application goes to federal entity that, and so when is the grant application due?
So the grant application is due August 29th. Our resolution of support will be the last thing to go in the application packet.
Okay.
Everything else, I just got the review materials today, actually like 2 hours ago.
Okay.
So that's
So
going
it's
to
all done, it's just a matter of
basically, yeah.
the city having.
Collecting support.
Yep.
I'll go to the council on Tuesday.
Yeah, so it works out barely.
Otherwise, there would have been some special meetings, you know.
Yeah. And then we will basically be able to spend the money if we are awarded in third quarter or fourth quarter 2025. So there's a year in between now and when we will actually be able to go out for RFP to get this study done. Sure. So yeah. Okay.
All right. Seeing no further questions or discussion, the motion was to recommend approval. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Let the record show that we approved it unanimously. Discussion items. Next up is a potential referendum. Staff report, or are we going to go straight to our council members?
Either way, I think you probably know more.
Yeah, we've talked about, we've been talking about this for over a year at council now, but essentially, to summarize, Fitchburg, like all local municipalities, I'll just go back to the beginning. Fitchburg, like all local municipalities, faces levy limits imposed by the state. So we can only increase taxes by the percentage of net new construction in the city. Over time.
Yep, since the 90s.
Over time, that net new construction, while in Fitchburg has been quite a lot over the years and has somewhat, we've actually survived this levy limit quite well compared to other communities. We have hit a situation where our net new construction is trending downward. Percentage-wise, I think our net new construction is anticipated to be possibly under 2% this year, and thus obviously not keeping up with inflation nor with the increasing costs of, wanting to increase staff salaries with cost of living increases, wanting to, health insurance premium increases. All those things are challenging. So budgets become more difficult and difficult. Also, we have more of an inability to hire staff because the operating cost to pay staff is the core function of local government, and also the thing that requires that chunk of operating money that we cannot, the council cannot opt to increase on our own because of the state levy limit. So the only option left for local governments is to go to a levy limit referendum, which is many people are familiar with because of the school districts have gone to referendum pretty frequently. I think pretty much everyone in the region has seen a levy limit referendum from a school district. Fitchburg, for the first time, is going to be considering going to a referendum for the first time for the November election. We will vote on that. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the agenda, but it's either going to be this Tuesday or, do you know, Ross?
I don't.
It's either going to be this Tuesday or it's going to be the next Tuesday to vote whether or not to move forward with the referendum. And then that would activate. Assuming that passes, that would activate. We have hired a consultation firm to help us advertise it to the public, and they were helping us process the last about 8 months, trying to assess whether or not we want to go to referendum, and including a survey that went out to the community, trying to assess the support for the referendum and specifically what parts of the city government we would want the referendum to fund. And so council has been talking about this for over a year, and our last conversation at committee of the whole a couple weeks back, we kind of really got down to the nitty-gritty of what the exact amount of levy referendum, the amount of money we want to potentially put forward, and also what that money would fund. And I believe that list of what I think we probably will consider, it's right there. So almost just under 3.6 million, which and $25 per month, that references the per month cost for the average home, the
median home.
Medium home price for the city of Fitchburg. So it would be different, obviously, depending on the different homes. And then this is the proposed impact of that. So several public safety, a significant portion is the public safety staff, also the police department facility operating costs, a couple of different other staff like communications director, finance manager, operating costs for the city writ large, and then also the piece that's most relevant to this committee would be transit improvements. And you can see in the list of what that breaks down to. The transit would be 10% of that total levy limit request, or the referendum request. totaling 350,000, and I think that's actually specifically tied to a quote from Madison Metro to do very similar to what we've discussed in previous meetings, meaning slightly extending the Route B down to the future end of the bus rapid transit to Treverton Pike, extending the Route 64 up 65
and 75.
Yeah, up to actually go past down to Lazy, up to Fish Hatchery, and up to that same stop, and then extending or increasing the frequency of the Route 75 with it having
65.
And 65. Okay.
Yes, 65 is currently commuter route, as is 75. So it would be 65, we get a route extension, and then 65 and 75 would have more operating hours.
So I'll say one more thing, and then I was hoping that Ross maybe could talk a little bit more about that. The council, as we were discussing, Bill and I shared about what we've discussed in transportation and transit, but certainly we are the ones, because of these conversations we've had, that we have the most context for what that means. But certainly I think the council's interested in what that potentially would look like and what the benefits of including that in the levy referendum would be. So the suggestion was to bring it to this committee to kind of have some further discussion so that we can share that discussion with the council and better prepare the council for the vote in August. Anything you want to add, Bill? Sorry, I just went for it.
Yeah, a couple more points. So at the committee of the whole, Chad Brecklin, city administrator, presented this to us. And he talked about the extension of 65 and 75. So it would be 45-minute service Monday through Friday during the day, 90-minute service evenings and weekends. He did not mention the extension of the existing Route B, and I asked him about that, and he said that was not part of their conversation at all.
The extension
so
of
Route B would would still be stopping at Cahill, Maine there, instead of coming all the way down to turning on Brennan and going up to Treverton Pike.
But only until the north-south BRT starts.
Well, let's let Ross.
Right.
We have also had separate conversations about bringing the B down from Cahill, Maine to Treverton Pike, and that would be likely separate from what's included in this referendum.
Do we know what that number is?
No. It's much lower than the 350,000.
Yeah, like 50,000 or something like that.
Because it might not even change the timing that much.
Right.
Because it's just one extra stop. I mean, I guess there's some lights involved, but it might actually not change the cadence.
There's a lot of dwell time right now at the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so they might be able to actually.
And then one other thing to point out is that when the 65 and 75 have all-day service, that opens up paratransit for everyone who lives within a half a mile of those routes. So that's extremely important to the senior center, because right now, if you want to ride to the senior center and you don't live within a half a mile of a bus route, you can't call up and get a ride via paratransit.
You can't get a ride to the senior center anyway because the senior center is not eligible for paratransit.
Oh, right.
So,
yes.
So just for the public and others who might not know, to have a origin or destination eligible for paratransit, it has to be within half mile of a all-day route. It can't be half a mile from a commuter peak hour only route. And so this is one of the reasons that we were offering back in the mid-teens the idea of the Fitchburg Flyer, which would basically it would extend the bus that at that point was coming out of this west transfer point down to Orchard Point. It would have come all the way across to the Civic Center and Hatchery Hill and connected with the 40 service. And so that would make the whole center of the city eligible for paratransit. This will do the same thing.
I actually didn't realize that.
Well,
I didn't make that connection. That's huge.
Sometime if you want to have coffee and hear about the history, I'd be happy to tell you. So this is a long-standing problem. Anything else, Bill?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah.
So maybe can I suggest, Ross, could you talk through it? I know we kind of touched on it piecemeal, but just for continuity's sake, could you just walk through what $350,000 for transit improvements buys us?
Yes.
From start to finish?
So I've been trying to bring up a map and Firefox has not been working, but I will try to wing it without my lines on the map, which will be fun. Route 65 currently runs from the city of Madison. It runs through the Southdale neighborhood, down into Terravessa, and then along Lacey to East Sherrill, and stops at City Hall. Makes a loop down to Lacey, and then turns around and goes back east and then up into Madison.
Basically around the south transfer point.
Correct.
It goes farther than that, but.
Well, the transfer points don't technically exist anymore, but.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But it goes to the hospital, right? That's the
yes, it goes all the way to the
UW hospital,
which I would never want to ride that far. But it does that in the mornings and the evenings at rush hour times, basically, for about 3 hours each. Middle of the day, there's no service. Nights, there's no service. Weekends, there's no service. For this, it would expand to all-day service, like Bill was saying, on a 90-minute, or Bill, can you repeat what Chad said at council?
Yeah, 45 minutes during the day, 90 minutes evenings and weekends.
Okay. So it would expand the service to that level, and then also bring the 65 up Fish Hatchery Road to this circle on McKee and Brendan and Triverton Pike. So this would then be the turnaround point. We'd basically extend it one stop north on Fish Hatchery Road. The 75 is...
Hey, Ross?
Yeah.
So the 65 would go up Fish Hatchery, not Mickelson Parkway?
Oh, that's a good point. You're correct about that. So part of our discussion with Metro Transit has been getting routes closer to the population, and there obviously no one lives on that actual part of Fish Hatchery Road, but people do live on Mickelson Parkway. So it would the 65 would actually come up Mickelson Parkway and do that same loop. So thank you, Bill. The 75 is known as the Epic route. It goes from Capitol Square down into Fitchburg on Fish Hatchery, and then out McKee all the way to Epic. This expansion and it runs at the same time as the 65 rush hour times. And this would make it all-day service, but the 65 would do its entire route every time. The 75 would not do its entire route every time because Epic funds this route and they're not interested in having all-day service because their workers generally leave at rush hour time, so there's no point for them. So the 75 would then stop basically at the Fitchburg border almost. It would do
Loop through Orchard.
Some kind of loop through Orchard Point, which we haven't really finalized yet, but there's a lot of options in there. And then come back the other way down McKee Road and head up to Capitol Square.
There's precedent. There used to be a 52 that looped around there.
Yep. And the other aspect of this is the Route B, which is already all-day service. Letter routes are all-day service, number routes are not. So the B currently stops in Cahill, Maine here, and it would also come down and do this loop. So we'd have kind of a mini transfer point on Brendan Avenue, or on Triverton Pike, I'm sorry.
But that's not included in the
Referendum.
referendum
The
estimate.
the Route B part of it is not included in the referendum.
I was going to say there was so much layover time that when it runs during rush hour every 15 minutes, there's often two buses parked there between the hotel and Qdoba.
Mm-hmm. And part of that is the drivers need break times and stuff like that.
Yep.
So,
But the point is that there probably is enough time in the route to take it down to Trevorton Pike without adding buses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's the key. If you have to add a bus, then the expense rises like crazy.
and then just for context, this stop location right here, this intersection will be modified, but this will be the eventual endpoint of bus rapid transit. It'll have a charging station, it'll have a bathroom for the drivers, and kind of a slightly larger like layover location.
We'll have a
for the
B-cycle
buses to
station.
stop. Yes. So, yeah.
So to put that into the context of the $350,000, everything that you just described that's incremental to the existing service represents the $350,000.
Except the extension of the B for Beta route down to Trevorton Pike.
Yes.
That's only for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, the north-south route will start, and it is planned to go down to Trevorton Pike. So that upcharge of whatever it is, 50 or 40 or $60,000 would only be for 2 years.
But this amount of money is 1 year, a 12-month time period.
And that's why it has to be part of the referendum, because we actually have funding sources potentially for a one-time cost of $350,000, but we need the operating cost. So if it's part of the referendum, we'll increase the levy by that, and they'll be able to sustain the funding long-term.
And the entirety of that amount is essentially handed to Madison Metro.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's
There are
other
contractors.
things that the city is spending that money on. It's pretty much just to get more service from Madison Metro.
Yep.
Theoretically, we would probably increase our state aid, right? Eventually?
Yes, it would. I mean, our state aid is a portion of what we spend, and it increases if we offer more service, but there is also a fixed amount of state aid. So,
It's a
statewide.
percentage.
yeah,
So if our service increases as a share of the total state, we get more of the state aid.
yes.
The Metro is funded approximately half by state and federal dollars, quarter by fares, and a quarter by local levy. And the way they compute the cost per hour is they take the entire cost of running the system and they divide it by the number of hours that it runs. And then if you want to extend your service, they say, okay, you want a route that's going to require this many bus and driver hours, you pay this much more, and that's the number. And, you know, they maybe have to buy more buses, but that part is included in the cost of this, running the system.
And just for context, the 300.
So Ross, just a trivia question here or something. If they extend 65 and 75 to all-day service, does that mean those routes are going to get name changes and become lettered routes?
I assume so. I haven't asked that question, but that's my assumption.
Do we get to pick the letters?
I assume that's the next two in the alphabet.
E and F. E for epic.
Right, yeah.
Except that it would still be the 75 beyond where
Yes, I don't know how that
Yeah,
works.
the hybrid route's really crazy.
That's why we pay them to do it.
The 350 is what percent of the entire transit budget?
So the entire transit budget
Today.
and this is off the top of my head, is about $2.3 million for Fitchburg. 56% of that is state funded through an annual grant program. And then another portion of that is paid by the fares and the advertising on the sides of the buses. And then the rest of that is what Fitchburg pays. Madison takes out the fares and the advertising revenues before they charge us.
I think,
But 350,000 is not the increase in the total, sorry, it's our increase in
it's
our
our
contribution.
money, and to compare that, what's
Yes.
our money right now? I think it's in the, about that much, isn't it, or a little more?
Whatever,
Like $300,000, $400,000 a year?
I feel like I pull up the budget.
Yeah,
sales stuff.
it's on one line in the budget, so easy to find. Bill and Gabriella, while you're looking that up, what would you like from our commission in the way of discussion? I mean, I think that's a terrific idea. I personally support the referendum, and I think it's going for good things. And with a special respect to transit, I think that these are the best improvements that we can make. But do you want a motion, or do you want, what do you want from us today?
Well, if everyone at least minimum wants to share their thoughts, because Bill and I certainly have more than ample opportunity to share our thoughts, so I would love to hear what the committee has to say.
Oh, you've heard from me.
So Steve, yeah.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, and I'm just interested in, so this, Rick, I'm glad you asked about, this is ongoing, so this is basically in perpetuity. And so one of the things that you'll notice is that in general, as time goes on, inflation is a thing and prices go up. So this is, I don't know how many years we figure this is going to fund these extensions before we're going to have to increase from 350 to something bigger. So that's one issue. And then the other is, do we want to have TTC encourage, well, I guess the extension of the Route B, do we want to advocate for that for the next 2 or 3 years, whatever, before the BRT route opens? Which would probably, because it's temporary, not be part of the referendum, but just, separate line item in a budget.
I will recognize myself. Yes, every year, the number for service hour goes up. And so we will have to deal with that, just like the price of concrete and the price of social workers. So yeah, it won't be 350 next year. I do think that this group should advocate for the extension of the Route B in the budget, whether or not it's in the referendum. That is, if the referendum is held and passes, I think that as part of the budget, we should also extend Route B to meet the other 2 routes. You had, I was going to recognize you next.
So I just want to say for context for the budget, so the way the budget process is going to work this year, because we typically adopt the budget before the November election, what the plan is to do is to adopt a budget assuming the referendum does not pass, and then subsequently there will be an omnibus amendment that we will pass, and then that authorizes the finance director to make the adjustments if the referendum passes based on what's outlined. So if we were wanting to extend the Route B and that wasn't included in the referendum package, it probably would have to be part of the operating budget that we pass.
It could be in the omnibus.
It could be an omnibus, yeah.
That's where I would put it, because you wouldn't want that extension if you didn't have the referendum.
Can you put the B in here and then after 2 years, use that money to pay what will be the extra cost because inflate for the extensions 2 years from now? I mean, how does it work? Are we tied in perpetuity for what is specifically listed in here to be used? Maybe that's a lawyer question.
This is my perspective, experience from city government, is that these dollars, these earmarks that you see on the PowerPoint
are really to explain it to the public, and they don't bind the city in any way.
Oh, okay.
We're just getting more money, and we're telling the public this is what we're going to use it for. And if we use it for something else, the public will be mad. But they won't, there won't be any recourse because the referendum question won't have all of these things enumerated. It'll just say we're going to shall we raise the levy limit this amount?
Okay.
So-
It is kind of detailed, the question.
That's because people will want to know where you got that big number.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen that shows the potential sample question wording. So it does say for
And
the,
we were told that any awkward wording that you see in here is that way because it's a requirement of how these questions need to be written.
Yeah, the statute specifies it. But, for example, you take the 6 fire positions, there's always going to be at least 6 fire positions. And so the exact allocation of this money is never going to violate this rule.
Gotcha.
Because there'll always be a certain amount for transit, there'll be police officers, and so on.
So you were gonna say how much the transit budget is approximately?
I'm still trying to find that.
Are we doubling what we spend in transit, or making a 1% change, or that's what?
I would say,
so I actually have our,
Okay.
Oh, look at this.
yeah, so Black Hat is the grant program that I applied for this for. So these, you can see it. So projected local share for operating is 583,000 for 2024.
Okay, so this year, we'll spend 582,000 on these Madison Metro, like all of that is money that's going to Madison Metro
Yes,
for bus service
correct.
for
That's
the existing
operating.
routes.
Yep.
And we're saying, add another $350,000 to that to get these extensions and frequencies changed.
Correct.
more than half, but more than a 50%, but less than 100% upcharge.
Right. Like I'm sure that in some of the other cases, these are much smaller increments of a total budget, whereas the 350.
Like the police headcount, for example.
Yeah, but the 350 is a pretty good increase over our existing budget for transit.
Taking a commuter route to an all-day route is a very big, expensive thing.
Yeah, and when we say all day, do we really mean 24 hours, or do we mean?
No. We mean all the day that the system runs.
Which
Okay.
is generally 6 or 6:30 to 10 or 11, depending on the route.
And
And less on weekend.
Like an hour less each.
Later start,
Yes.
earlier finish on the weekends.
And disregarding convenience, is the 45-minute frequency something codified, or is that simply what we think 45 minutes would?
Used to be that the routes were designed to be either 30 or 60 minutes so that everything would come together at the transfer points.
Sure.
Now, there can be 45-minute routes depending on how long they are and how many buses are on them. So that's why that number is that right now. Is that?
And we could, we could tell Madison we want 15-minute service on these routes. It would be much more expensive because they would need to add a lot more hours and a lot more buses to meet that.
The only route that has 15-minute service is the Route B
Yes.
down to Chattree.
Exactly.
Which
But
is
that's just an
most
example.
dense,
That
yeah.
would be
A and
way
B.
overkill for
Yeah,
this.
oh yeah.
But it would be very reasonable to think that 45 minutes is really too long and an hour and a half is way too long for off-peak, and that we should be running 30-minute peak and 1 hour and 60-minute off-peak. Right now it's 40. This is proposed, or is currently running at 45 and 90. The problem is there comes a point, and with BRT, when you go under 15 minutes, so during peak hours when it's 7.5 minutes,
that's the time where you don't need a schedule. You just walk out and there'll be a bus there within a few minutes. And that's what people like. And if you get more than 15 minutes, now you're watching the bus's location on your GPS, or you're watching your clock, your watch, and your schedule.
The fact that this would open the city campus, including the library, the community center, and the senior center, to any person that lives, that's on a fixed, within a half mile of a fixed route in the city of Fitchburg, or I mean, even
It
outside.
qualifies for paratransit.
Yes.
Yes. The other thing is that the reason that we need to be delivering transit is because 40% of the people in Fitchburg do not have access to a personal vehicle. And so we need to care about our neighbors who can't get around.
And they can't get to.
I will tell an anecdote I believe I've told here before, but it bears repeating, is that when my wife and her friend were doing a get out the vote effort up in the Leopold neighborhood on some fall election, they were saying, you know, you can go down and you can vote today because early voting has started. You can just go to City Hall. And they say, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why would I go down to Martin Luther King Boulevard if I live in Fitchburg? And they said, incredulously, Fitchburg has its own City Hall. And these people who don't have their own personal vehicles have never been south of McKee Road. And they don't get to use the splash pad, and they don't get to use the library, and they don't get to use the senior center. And they're paying in their rent taxes for all of these services, and they can't use them. And it's a terrible injustice. I think that our alders want to hear from the other two of you about what you think of the referendum.
I think it's awesome. I think it's so exciting. Transit is in here. It probably makes me go from supportive to excited to talk about it and get other people to vote for it. Yeah, and I think I'd be curious for your conversation or with Mueller, I don't know what's appropriate, but like how TTC can help and talk about this to people who will be voting on it and talk about how important. I think, and we have talked about the importance of access to the City Hall and Senior Center and the library for so long. And so excited to hear how we can help also tell people about why that's so important.
It's a great question. I think assuming it passes, I think there'll be a very quick conversation. There'll be a lot more information coming out from Mueller, including.
Assuming the council passing to have a referendum.
Yeah, assuming council's passes the referendum. The council passes the resolution to go to referendum.
Yes.
Mueller would then work on education, which I believe includes web content, information sessions, education sessions, and I think at least 2 mailers. Is it 2 or 3 mailers, Bill?
Yeah, I don't recall, but it'll be several. I mean, it's going to be an educational outreach program, and we hired them to make sure that everyone in Fitchburg knows about this, and it's presented to them in a favorable way, so that we can get people just like Elizabeth, get them excited about the new services we can offer the citizens.
But the important point there is that the city is not advocating that people say yes. What the city is doing is advertising the need and why the proposal is being put on the ballot.
The alternatives.
And yes, and giving people the reasons why their prerogative to vote yes or no is up to them. And also individuals like you could advocate for people to say yes, but the city's education campaign won't be focused on you should vote yes. It's just an education campaign to explain why.
There could be a vote yes pack.
Yes, there could be individuals advocating.
That would not involve anybody in city staff.
Yeah, the city staff will never say vote yes. They will never say that, but they will explain why it's necessary and why we went to referendum. Assuming we do.
We don't.
Yeah.
Rick,
I like Elizabeth's perspective of the service increments that are made by having this additional funding for transit. If I try to sort of block out all the rest of the items in the resolution and think specifically about transit as though a referendum was on the ballot only about transit, only about $350,000, then part of me thinks, boy, that's a large increase in the budget that we're committing to henceforth. And at the same time, I think, okay, so if all of the people who are going to vote are people who need access to transit that they don't have today, then this would be overwhelmingly supported, just the transit piece of it, because of the need that's described here. And I don't have independent context for that, so I have to listen to what you guys say in that particular area. So I agree that it's a very significant improvement in the transit situation in the city of Fitchburg. And it doesn't seem like a large amount of money on its own. However, it is in the context of a much larger referendum, and it is a large increase to the transit budget. So I'd still be supportive of it. I just had to say that.
Well, using a similar calculation as I was using back when I was promoting the Fitchburg flyer, if they won $350,000 a year, and there's 35,000 of us, that's $10. Now, we don't pay taxes per capita, we pay a per property value.
Right.
But it averages out to $10 for every man, woman, and child per year in Fitchburg. And again, to leverage the paratransit system out. Right now, the paratransit system only comes down the Verona Road and the Fish Hatchery Road corridors. It doesnn't go in the rest of the, and across the Beltline. It doesn't go around the rest of the city, and that would fill in that entire middle area all the way out to the northeast. And so it's very high leverage.
And to be clear for the discussion here, although that increases the footprint of paratransit, there is no incremental cost to the city. Is that correct?
Paratransit is covered by federal, isn't
The
it?
cost of our part of the paratransit cost is in that $350,000.
I see, okay.
We get charged for paratransit miles used, and regular bus service hours, and the paratransit miles are in there.
And it's also in the budget number that you showed.
Yes, correct.
I think not included, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that that doesn't anticipate a gigantic jump in paratransit utilization that might happen if so much more of the city was open to paratransit. Could demand jump a lot and then affect us in future years?
It could, yeah, that's just, it's proportional based on the additional population that is served by paratransit based on our current paratransit usage.
Good.
So maybe every senior in the city wants to come to City Hall, and a lot of them don't use it now, then that would increase more than what we're estimating.
But there is a number in there to account for an increase in the
Yes.
service
Yep.
rate.
Yep.
Right. All right, Alders, do you have what you need?
I think yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Good.
you.
All right, so much for that discussion item, worthy one. Under Beltline Program and Environmental Planning and Environmental Linkages, what did you have in mind? I don't think there's anything in here.
No, there's no packet material. I just wanted to, I think everyone except for Rick was on the email, since you weren't on this commission at that time. But sent an email relaying that our Common Council does not support lane additions on the Beltline, and received a response back from the DOT planning manager that said, thanks for the email, Fitchburg is a valuable component of this planning study and we'll take this into consideration.
You didn't agree or promise to remove it or anything, but.
Appreciated the response.
Yep.
Can you just describe what the process is from here, if you know?
So right now, the Beltline PEL is just the planning study that has, you know, hundreds of components. At the end of the planning study, when they finalize the PEL, there will be a list of basically recommended projects, is what I'll call them. I'm sure the PEL calls them something else.
Preferred local alternative.
Yes. Then those projects will go into the NEPA phase, which is like the environmental planning phase, and is for state entities. It's required before going into further planning or construction on any of these projects. And NEPA costs a lot of money. It's, you know, kind of like that 10, 20, 10, 30, 60, 90 plan completion that we were talking about.
Yeah, and for anybody in the public who might be watching, and I know Elizabeth knows this, but NEPA is the National Environmental Policy Act, or Protection Act? Policy Act, and that's the thing that requires environmental impact studies. What the Beltline PEL study is intending to do is to figure out what are the projects for which we need environmental impact studies. And this is for the Beltline in 2035 to 2050-ish.
And so will a package move forward into one NEPA process, or like bike improvements over here, whatever happens with the Beltline over here, you know, park and rides over here? I'm gonna stop asking questions too, but.
I believe it will be based on the individual projects. So something like the Perry Street overpass or the Fish Hatchery Road bike underpass or whatever the project is. But a package will be recommended by the PEL that will have a bunch of those projects in it. But they'll have their own individual NEPA processes, I believe.
And there's a full-blown environmental impact study, and then there's a mini one, and what's that called? Environmental assessment or something like that?
Yeah.
And what you're trying to do is you would like your project to be sufficiently non-impactful so that you can go through that lightweight process. So, all right, anything else we want to get out of that? Any other questions or discussion on PEL? All right, now your laundry list of 2025 projects.
Open that up.
Where are you reaching us from, Bill?
I am in Two Rivers, Wisconsin.
Oh, nice. Are those one of the two rivers behind you?
No, it's supposed to be like
Lake Monona.
Okay, so one thing that was asked for as a future agenda item a few months ago now was just kind of an overview and opportunity to talk about some of our 2025 projects. So I've got them up on the screen here, separated into what's being designed in 2025 and what's being constructed in 2025. The stuff that's being constructed is generally already designed or in the design process. So I'll kind of start with those. Our surface maintenance project, there's really not much design there. That's just our chip seal, crack seal like I was talking about. Sidewalk repair, street resurfacing, we do those, we design those and construct them every year. The design is generally for the next year. South Sayin, phase 2 and 3. We did phase 1 for the past 2 years, and phase 2 and 3 moved north on South Sayin, all the way up to the McCoy intersection, which will be basically completely rerouted. I'll get to that in more detail later. That'll be constructed next year. Fitchburg Road from Tonto to Nesbitt. Tonto is just south of Lacey. It's on the town of Verona side, just for context. That's another reconstruction. So on the far west and far east sides of the city, we'll have those two major north-south roads going next year, which I'm sure will be fun for traffic. And then Basswood Drive, which is just, yeah, Basswood Drive is just a little kind of stub street that will be reconstructing. It goes into Bud's Drive, basically. And we're basically making that look more like a private street because Promega and Sub-Zero have a lot of public traffic using their private roads in there because it just looks like a public road. So they're paying for it.
But Basswood is a public.
Basswood's public, but the other roads going off of
Buds
it
are not.
are private. Yep. So then the projects that are under design, which obviously have more of an opportunity for comment and changes. We've got the 3 annual projects like I was just talking about. The Seminole Path North, Fitchburg Road.
Go back to Seminole Path, where is that?
So that is by Hop House.
Okay, so that connects Hop House to the roundabout?
Yes, but the portion in between Hop House and the roundabout will be part of the O'Brien development. That'll be happening in there. There's a farm in there that will be developing. So they'll be required to extend that path down there.
And so that's what you're designing?
This is just the portion on the Hop House lot, and then also another section that connects the path on the north side of Lacey. Yes, the north side of Lacey to the school driveway.
Oh, okay.
I've got a map later on.
All right, yep, okay, thanks.
Fitchburg Road, south of where we're reconstructing next year, will be under design. That'll be kind of just a repaving project, adding bike lanes. Bryant Road is another kind of weird industrial road in the city, like Basswood Drive. County Highway bike underpass. That is north of Terabessa on County Highway and it'll connect to another development on the west side. And then extending BRT, which we've talked about already.
On the west side of
Yes, so currently there's a path on the east side of
that comes to a stop.
Yes, so this tunnel would go under at about that point, a little further north, but and then the path would continue on the west side of because that's where we're going to get development, and we can require those developers to run that path to the north.
Because that's like a landfill right now, right?
Yes.
Clean construction. The path will be kind of like the way the path along County M on the west side of Madison dodges back and forth under the county highway. It runs up along the ways for a way, and then it goes underneath, and then runs up farther north and goes back under.
Okay.
So
You want to get that out of presentation or out of editing mode?
sure. So this is
Your screens are there. You go.
Okay. This is Seminole Path North. I've got the kind of the CIP numbers in here, and then the maps basically. So this is the portion that goes from Wayfair Street to Savannah Oaks. Right now the path just dead ends at Wayfair Street. And then this red portion would be done by the developer of this parcel here, and we would do this part in front of Hop House. So, any questions about that, comments?
I walk on Lacey all the time. I'm so excited that's gonna get filled in.
Yeah, that'll be a nice one.
What is the plan for urban section for Seminole Highway north of Lacey?
So, originally, this CIP number it had a very long name, and it included the urbanization of Seminole Highway from Lacey. I actually don't know how far north it went, up until it has curb. That was taken out, I'm not sure in which CIP, but multiple years ago.
Okay, and so that's not planned at all right now?
Correct. This is basically all that remains of that project.
There is
multi-use path that dead ends on a sidewalk here. And I once thought that when this road was reconstructed, that's what this connection was waiting for. But we need a culvert and a connection here to make this path useful, because you're not allowed to ride bikes on sidewalks in Fitchburg. So could you look into seeing if that could be accomplished in some way as part of the CIP project or some other way?
I can talk to Misty and see if that can be included in here, because it's not right now.
Yes, okay. Am I correct that that's why it wasn't connected?
I don't know.
Lost in the sand time. Okay, very good. Thank you for explaining.
Yeah.
Hey, Ross.
Yeah.
Yeah, question. If you zoom in on, see Wayfair Street there, where the path on the west doesn't line up with the path on the east.
I can't zoom in, but
I've seen that elsewhere in the city, and I'm questioning why that happens. Like if you want to go straight on the path, you have to do a little zigzag on a road in order to cross the street there.
Are you talking about near Lacey or some, oh.
No, it's over the ACA. It's like just a little bit near Savannah.
Yeah, so
And then you have to basically go up one
So you're
house.
talking about here?
Yes.
oh, that I'm not sure why that happened. Usually it's because of
Lot lines.
lot lines, yeah.
And prioritizing bicycling, ease of bicycling after other things.
yeah, I've seen that in other established neighborhoods, and I guess I had made the assumption that the neighborhood was put in and the bike path was put in later and had to work around, the established property lines. But in something that's basically under construction, it sure feels like we can do better.
Well, you think that's bad, that one that extends to the east onto the school property used to have a 6-foot tall fence right across it. But the school district subsequently removed that fence, thank heaven, but they have not built a path on their property to connect to it. It just ends in grass.
Anything else on this one?
So it's 750,000 for what we see, the blue and red lines.
Just blue.
So this, I believe this number includes both.
Okay, and then
It will partially be funded by the developer.
would pay
Oh.
for
Oh, okay, they reimburse us.
most of the red line.
They would just pay for it, it's just shown.
blow your
Fitchrona Road, I'm calling this Fitchrona Road, parentheses Wayland, because it's kind of surrounding Wayland. It's this purple section here. This would add bike lanes to this. It would repave and add bike lanes to this portion of Fitchrona. So it would be very similar to what we're doing on Wayland right now.
To be clear, there will not be curb and gutter.
Correct.
So we call those paved shoulders.
Yes.
And they are multi-use facilities, whereas you're not allowed to park in a bike lane. You can park on a paved shoulder, can be used as a breakdown lane.
Correct. The larger reconstruct that we're doing next year is shown in orange here, and it extends further north. So, questions, comments, concerns on this one?
We're just doing the pink segment because that's the part that's in bad shape?
Correct.
Okay.
Between here and between these two sections is historically the section that the town of Verona has taken responsibility for. It's not codified anywhere, but that's just how it's been done.
That's the tradition.
Do they have paved shoulders
No.
through that section?
They just did
last year or the year before, they just did Whalen west of Fitchburg and Grandview west of Fitchburg, and they did not pave the shoulders on either.
So there's none on that stretch of Petrona?
Correct. I just biked it.
Okay,
Yeah. No, we had a challenging time getting the town.
But the speed limit was just reduced. Thank you for that.
that was mostly to town of Verona, so.
Thank you for not standing in the
We
way.
passed it. So yeah, this one is 2025 design and then 2026 construction currently planned, so. All right, Bryant Road, this is in the North Fish Hatchery neighborhood. Most people don't realize this is a city road because it just looks like the driveway for Zimbrick. So one of the goals of this project is to better delineate that and make it have a better separation between all of the parked cars on each side and basically upgrade this to an actual city street. One of the big jobs with this is to work with the businesses because any construction that we do will do major impacts to every building you see in this image. So.
Can I ask why, not that sounds like I'm opposed to it, I think, but like why do we want this? Is it helpful for traffic flow or something to make people understand it's a road?
So the pavement is in extremely poor condition. It's terrible. Probably like the 5th worst road in the city, if I had to guess. And it honestly sees a ton of traffic just because Zimbrick has buildings on both sides of the street, and every car that goes through Zimbrick has to cross the street, I think they told us 4 times. So it sees an inordinate amount of traffic for the road that it is.
I realize I'm the new guy, so I should like save this for some other future meeting, but you know, would we ever consider abandoning that road and just say, Zimbrick, this is yours, you can, because it's 90% Zimbrick traffic, right? It may be people that are getting their cars serviced at Zimbrick or whatever, and I've driven on that a few times, and it's nice to be able to go from there to there, but as far as like helping anyone besides someone who's either working at Zimbrick or doing business with Zimbrick, it really isn't a very useful road for much else.
So there are 2 other businesses. There's Kavanaugh Restaurant Supply, and then there's a sporting goods store just north of there.
Yep.
So there are those 2 other businesses, and Zimbrick would have to accept that, which from what I understand, I obviously wasn't around at this point, but in the 80s, the town of Fitchburg tried to do just that and give that road to Zimbrick, and Zimbrick didn't want it. And in a meeting with them.
Wasn't this town of Madison until this year?
No, that was, oh, yes, that was, yeah.
That was.
Then maybe this was like 85 or 86. It was Fitchburg that.
But didn't it just
No,
become Fitchburg?
It became Fitchburg in October 2022.
Yeah.
And it was previously the town of Madison.
So that was all town of Madison.
It's a terrible road because it belonged to the town of Madison.
Yeah.
And the other problem that you have through here is not only traffic, but stormwater. So it's all paved.
Mm-hmm.
If you go in there with curb and gutter, then you have a chance to capture some of that water and treat it. And you can also talk to those businesses and say, you're responsible for capturing your water and treating it. We're doing ours. But right now, it's all just one big mush, and it washes all the grease and oil down into wherever the watershed goes, maybe Nine Springs Creek. Goes to the north. Goes into the Beltline interchange ponds.
I believe so.
Okay, well, that's a big job.
Yeah.
And that's probably a big contributor to the stormwater remediation we just had to do on Greenway Cross there, right?
Mhm.
That I'm not sure. I would have to ask Ben about that, Ben Schulte. I think that water might go in different directions. I'm not sure though. Anything else for Bryant Road? Here's the bike underpass. This one we have grant funding for. We have a TAP grant for this. They're funding about 50% of it. If you know the Spoke Drive underpass, this will be basically a copy and paste of that. It's the same designer doing it.
But it will be at that location, so that path on the east will have to be extended to it?
Yes, and that's included in this project, is extending the path, which ends like right here, a couple hundred feet up to the underpass location, and then we'll get across this street with a little bit of extra stub path, and then it'll be extended to the north by the developer.
Oh, okay, so the 756 over the 2-year time period is just extending the path at the underpass.
Correct.
Stop there.
Correct.
And is the timing of what the developer would do expected to be coincide with this?
Not necessarily. That was our hope when this was planned. From my understanding, that might not work out exactly the way we want it to.
There have been a number of false starts in trying to develop that problematical land.
It would be difficult to delay this because we have grant funding, and the grant funding is programmed for 2026. I've discussed with WISDOT the possibility of delaying it, and the next time TAP grant funding is available is 2030 at the earliest. So
Very often we build things that end places that are inconvenient and wait for the next phase. That's how the Cannonball Path got getting built in 6 phases.
So,
it's not done yet.
Yeah. Here's a map of the BRT. We've talked about the 2025 portion of this, which is just extending it down to, extending Route B down to near McKee Farms Park. That 1.5 million is basically our portion of building the BRT stations. That's a 10% of the total cost. So we won't actually spend that in 2025, we'll spend that later on. This 5.5 million in 2033 is for extending BRT down Fish-Hatchery Road to City Hall. That would be probably 2 to 3 more stops, and the entire construction cost of that would be on Fitchburg. Right now, we only pay 10% of the construction cost because there's a 90% federal grant.
And for those that are new to CIP projects, the first 5 years are like under planning. They're like pretty solid projects. The back 5 years are much more theoretical. So that obviously is subject to change, but it's in the plans, but it's on the
We don't spend any money at all.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, we're spending nothing.
Just 0. So, assuming that it was, actually went the way that it's budgeted here, would we be abandoning the facilities that were built on Trevorton?
No, the bus would likely still charge there, and that would be kind of their layover location. Having the layover in the middle of the route instead of at the end makes things not ideal for people who get on at the end of the route, obviously. So whenever we extend it, we would probably look at how much it would cost to move the charging station. But right now, the plan would be to leave it there.
The 350,000 doesn't look so bad anymore.
That probably doesn't completely take into account inflation.
Again, for context, one of the BRT stations, one station costs about 1.5 million total. One of the BRT buses costs about that much as well. And then there's also the street reconstruction to fit the stations in there and all that stuff, so. Then for construction, we can kind of move through these quickly. Here's Cyan Phase 2, just kind of an overview. Roundabout at Central Park Place and 9 Bark in Cyan. And then the project stops basically at Clayton Road. And then Cyan Phase 3, which has federal funding, that's why it's a separate phase, is the reconstruction of the Cyan and McCoy intersection.
Why is the Cap City being rerouted to the north of the parking lot?
So it does not have to cross this driveway. The trailhead driveway, we wanted to move it to be in line with the new McCoy Road alignment.
Okay.
Which moved it, you know, basically to where the trail is now. So in order to work with the new driveway, it'll move to the north of the driveway.
May I borrow your mouse for another question so Bill can see where I'm pointing?
That's a kind of a late addition to that plan, isn't it? I guess the last I knew of this was well over a year ago, and I didn't remember that rerouting was part of the plan at that time.
So that trailhead driveway is why this didn't get finished, why this didn't get constructed this year. Because there were property acquisition issues based on that. So, and it was not included in earlier versions of this.
There is a power line that runs along here, which I assume, and I haven't checked on DCI map, is the property line separating Gervasi from public lands. And I believe that this little building is encroaching into the public lands. Is he going to be asked to move that back onto his property?
Not as part of this project.
Okay, I think that he should. And then this slip lane, can we not have these kind of slip lanes that cause these extra crossings and so on?
Yes, that's a comment that I know we heard at the McCoy.
And every time I go through there, I rue the day that got put in. We had a group of 10 go from the senior center yesterday morning, and we don't all fit on that island. And so if you follow the signals and don't wait in the road, then it takes multiple times to get everybody across. What we do instead is we cork that intersection and cross against the red, stop traffic with a bike. Same problem with the slip lane on John Nolan at North Shore. Went through there with the same group, and again, we just cut off and went straight across the slip lane instead of stopping on the island because we wouldn't all fit on the island. It just increases the number of conflict points for the convenience of drivers that want to make a fast right turn. So I think it should have no part in our planning. Anything else?
I wholeheartedly concur.
On to the next one then, I guess.
All right. Fitchrona Road from Tonto to Nesbitt. The main part of this is the roundabout at Lacey and Fitchrona. Sorry. The rest of it is a pretty straightforward reconstruct, except for all of the stormwater work. Fitchrona Road floods like every 4th year. It flooded this year pretty badly. And then we're also adding a bike path, or multi-use path on our side of the road, the east side of the road, all the way to the north. It'll go under the bike bridge and the 18151 bridges, and it'll have some pretty large retaining walls in there.
Do we know anything about the access into what's going to be a subdivision in the southeast quadrant of that?
The new condos on the Verona side, or the
No, I don't know anything
South
about
Stoner
those.
Prairie on our
South Stoner Prairie.
So the path right now basically stops at that development line, and they would be required to continue the path to the south.
Very good.
Through their development.
And are conventional bike lanes or buffered bike lanes left of the roundabout, south of the roundabout?
I believe this all has buffered bike lanes.
Nice. Other questions?
The speed limit through there is going to be either is or will be 35 miles per hour or less for that whole stretch, right?
It will be 35 once this is completed.
Okay.
Which will match Lacey, which will help motorists comply.
This is Basswood Drive. We don't really need to talk about this one very much. This end will be a cul-de-sac. That's the main part of this.
And then there will be driveway-ish connections onto Bud's Drive?
Yes, they'll look kind of like these driveways.
Yeah,
so people won't.
You're supposed to be able to tell if a private road is a private road if the sidewalk goes across it and if it has a curb ramp. So we got that down at the end of Discovery Path.
And that's what I got.
Very comprehensive. We thank you.
Yeah, thanks for going through that. That was really cool.
Okay. Bill, is this your agenda item? Week without driving?
Yes.
You want to kick it off then?
Sure. So this came to my attention via one of the many podcasts I listen to, and I put out some feelers, and it seems like there's general interest throughout Dane County. This is the week without driving. So basically, as Steve mentioned before, 40%-ish of Fitchburg residents don't drive. And so this is your opportunity to go a full week without driving a car and experience our transportation system, through the lens of somebody who is a non-driver. So I've drafted a mayoral proclamation, and I'm looking for feedback from TTC and the Bike and Ped Commission as well. If there's any additions, changes, deletions, whatever, let me know, and I can update that draft.
I've got one thing for you, Bill. Down at the bottom in the resolve clause, it says that the mayor, along with the Fitchburg City Council members, a mayoral proclamation, I don't think she can really speak for the council members, and I would suggest that if you want to weigh in as a council, that it could be a resolution, and then the council would vote on it and the mayor would sign it or veto it, but she wouldn't. And then you would have the council weighing in on it. Otherwise, it's a mayoral proclamation.
I took this verbiage from a previous mayoral proclamation.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm wrong. But
I will run that by Mayor Julia and see what she says.
Yep.
I think it looks great, Bill. I like it.
Okay.
And one of the things...
And it's...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is similar to the verbiage. If you go to if you go to weekwithoutdriving.org, they have sample verbiage for a proclamation or resolution. If you just Google this, you can find Governor Inslee's 2022 proclamation in the state of Washington. and this is very similar. And I reached out to a contact in Middleton, and she wrote a resolution, and that passed through their city council a couple of weeks ago. The MPO is going to be taking part in this. Their round trip program, they'll have something kind of similar to what they did for this past April's Spring Roll Challenge. So there'll be some promotion. B-Cycle is offering a $10 discount on a monthly pass redeemable during that week. The Wisconsin Bike Fed, Madison Area Bus Advocates, Wisconsin Transit Riders Alliance are all promoting this. And if any of you are geeky enough to sign up for the Dane County Cities and Villages Association newsletter, they included a blurb about this in their July 22nd newsletter.
I suggest that the key thing that we should attempt to accomplish would be to get our 9 elected officials to take the pledge to not drive during the week. Now, people, might have an emergency, but I think that elected officials as policymakers are the ones that are most important to get this message, although it's true of we commissioners and the general public. So I would ask you two to take the pledge and to get your colleagues to do that too.
Yes, and actually if you go to weekwithoutdriving.org, you can click the little sign up button, which I have done, and I've registered myself as an elected official within the city of Fitchburg.
Bill has already mapped out my bike route to.
Well, if you need a second opinion, let me know.
And I told her that in a couple of years she won't have to drive around the Odana golf course because the bike path on the north side of the Beltline is going to be completed.
Yeah, that'll be nice. And you'll be able to go over Perry Street over the Beltline on your bike. All right. Anything else on that, Bill? Any questions or discussion?
I just have a question about the calculation that the Wisconsin Department of Transportation did on the 40%. If you had not told me that number and you said, hey, if we had a week without driving, what would be your goal for the number of people in Fitchburg that don't drive that week? And I might say, hey, 40% would seem like a pretty good, and we're already there, I guess. Is this like children and people who don't drive? Or is this people who could have a driver's license, but they don't? Or
no, this is 40% of all citizens. So making the number up would be, 0 to 8, you probably wouldn't want to have much freedom to do anything independently, driving across town, whatever. But, once they hit like 8 or 9 years of age, there's no reason they shouldn't be able to hop on their bike and go to school, But they probably can't, depending on where they live because of various issues. So there's the under 16 crowd. There's the people who are disabled or can't seem to pass the driver's test, and then there's the elderly who either have given up driving willingly or their kids have taken their keys away. And then there's people who's, basically conscientious objectors who say, look, I don't want to be part of this culture where, we pollute the environment, we kill 40,000 people every year on the roads, that kind of thing. So it's people who either cannot drive or choose not to drive. That's what makes up the 40%. And if you Google Wisconsin DOT non-driver map, you can find that map, and they've got it broken down by, I think, to the city level.
Okay, thank you.
But this is, this whole thing is geared toward the 60% who do drive, take the pledge, go a week without driving yourself. So get where you can on foot, on bike, with public transit. And if none of those work out, then, you're basically forced to choose of between either not doing that thing or bumming a ride from a friend. And you should go through that process to see what it's like for people who don't drive.
Uber, yeah. Any parent of school-age kids is well aware of the inconvenience of not being able to drive because they have to take their kids everywhere. Okay, we got a few more things that we want to try to get through here. This item, wait a minute. Where's my item?
Next is reports.
Oh, okay, I'm going to do it under number 9, never mind. Okay, so
well, I guess one last thing on this. So there was the one whereas clause where I listed all the things that Fitchburg is doing. And Ross, I don't know if you want to embellish that with, smart traffic signals or anything else that, actions that we're taking to make things a little easier for non-drivers. And you can ping me offline with any ideas you've got there. And
Sure.
all of the commissioners, if you have anything, send me an email and I can incorporate some changes.
okay. Reports. Alders?
Bill, you taking it?
Bill?
Yeah, so I guess I made a list of all this stuff, and it's pretty much everything that's gone through Plan Commission as well as Common Council. So Gabriella, feel free to jump in. There's a long list here. I'll just go through them kind of quickly. There's an ordinance change coming through that removes car wash from a valid business highway zoning. So if you want a car wash, it's only allowed if it's secondary to a fueling station. And that same ordinance change says that adult entertainment is now conditional rather than by right. So however that affects transportation, those two changes are in there. Mm-hmm. There's the development Inspiration Point within Swan Creek. So between Sherrill Parkway on the south and Sassafras on the north, between Big Blue Stem and Crinkleroot, there's that one block that is currently an empty plot of land, and there's going to be 60 small footprint single family homes on there. Some will be attached, some will be detached. That will be proceeding. We've got a development coming in on the north side of McKee across from where Target is. That's going to be fairly significant. There's a 4-story, they call it a Texas wraparound, which is going to be like 200 plus housing units. And there's a parking structure in the middle, and you drive up, like I'm assuming it's a spiral, and then you basically park on whatever floor you live on. So when you go in and out, you just, your car is there and you go up and down that center. There's also going to be, there's 4 lots immediately adjoining McKee Road, and we're going to get 2 drive-through restaurants, a bank, and a car wash there. And then there's also, between those 2 things, be a junior box store, not a big box store. It might be a strip mall, and there may be another housing development in there. But I think the estimate they came up with was 14,000 new daily trips in that area.
Well, so the 4 lots that are fronting McKee have been approved. The lot behind it that could hold a big box store, that's not moving forward at this time.
I missed where that was, though.
It's right across from Target. It's
I see.
across McKee from Target,
Yeah,
next to the quarry. That big lot there.
The abandoned part of the quarry.
Yeah.
Although the homes are right behind the quarry. They're further
On the
back.
north side of Fitchburg where it bends around.
But that whole big swath of land behind the 4 box stores at the front is not moving forward at this time.
And Schneider Road is being reconstructed. A small portion of that is Fitchburg. Most of it's the town of Dunn.
That's this
We
year?
talked about some of
That's done already.
Okay. get back there.
Yeah,
Sure.
I guess that's my list from council.
Should we remove bike and ped from the list going forward,
Sure.
since we don't have a bike ped rep?
Yep.
Well, Ross, do you want to say, have you been attending their meetings? There was one on Tuesday.
Yeah, I attend all the meetings. They basically talked, I gave a small update for like our RFBs that we've been putting up. But that was pretty minor. And then most of what they talked about was bike and ped plan update, which that's out for RFP right now. So they just talked about some of the stuff they'd like to see in it.
Okay. And Plan Commission, anything else?
Yeah, one thing, on Anton Drive, that used to be Mad Power Training, just approved an event space, a private event space to go in there.
Okay.
There was a different proposal that got approved, but they pulled out. So it's gonna be a private event space, weddings, family parties, small ticketed events.
Okay.
Seems like a good fit for it. And then there's also, on the, right near the Lacey Seminole intersection, the property that we were talking about, that path is gonna go on, the Seminole path.
O'Brien?
That property is going through the initial certified survey map and rezone to start that development. Right now, the two properties that they're working on is an indoor pickleball facility, which they're quite excited about, 12-court facility with some other indoor amenities associated with that. And there's gonna be a second building that will be mixed use, includes 5,000 square feet of commercial and 36 apartment units is the current plan.
Which one will be north and which one will be south?
I actually do not know.
I think the pickleball building will be to the north.
By Hop House.
Mhm.
I think it's closer to Hop House.
There's two buildings there, right? There's gonna be an east building and a west building on the north, and one of them is the pickleball facility and the other one is to be determined yet?
No, so the other one is a mixed use, 5,000 square feet of commercial and 36 apartment units. I think the pickleball is closer to Hop House.
Yeah.
And then there is a third lot that, the plan is potentially to do some high density apartments. There will need to be a minor comp plan amendment in order for that to pass.
That's the
but
one
for
on the
now-
roundabout?
I believe so, and for now that remains an outlot.
On the south side of that O'Brien lot, yeah.
With the 100-year-old cheese factory
Exactly.
that's falling down.
So that's just gone through the certified survey map and the rezone, and that will continue moving forward.
Okay.
And then just a note that the South Stoner Prairie neighborhood plan is getting close to final. And then the Greenfield neighborhood plan is still under discussion. I believe the Greenfield neighborhood plan survey is open. It is not just for people that live in the neighborhood, it's for anybody. So if you go on the city website, there is a survey for the Greenfield neighborhood. I know they've had a challenging time working with the neighbors, so it's been a longer process than anticipated.
Talked one of those neighbors off the ledge.
Yeah. And that's all for Plan Commission.
Thank you. Questions on any of the reports? All right, there's a lengthy item in your packet that I included for this future agenda item, which is the Vision Zero resolution. It includes a number of parts. It's from the Vision Zero network, and their contractor Change Labs wrote this. And it starts with some explanation about why you need a Vision Zero resolution and what it's good for and so on and what should go into it. And then there's some boilerplate that one can use as a starting point. And that's followed by a Vision Zero policy, which the resolution adopts. And that is more boilerplate and it's a starting point. And it is my hope that each of us will read this before we come back in September with the idea of discussing how this fits in to our needs in Fitchburg, if at all, and what we would like to do with it, if anything. I obviously have my own ideas, but I am very eager that we come to a group decision on this, and something that we are proud to present to the council as the way forward.
And this will, of course, fit in very nicely with the comprehensive safety action plan that is needed for Vision Zero that we just approved our support for the MPO applying for, to end with a preposition. So are there any questions about this and what it's for?
I look forward to the discussion.
Yes, it should be good. So I don't have anything else. Any other announcements besides our next meeting? Then I will see you all on September 12th. Motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Good. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you, FACT.